Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. Before I forget, if you guys wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, subscribe if you don't already belong to my channel, share me with anyone who may be interested in this video, and also hit the notification bell so that you are notified in the event that I drop a new video. Seems like recently a lot of you have been enjoying my movies and tarot little series. I haven't even started a playlist for it yet, but I have came up with the idea of blending my two greatest passions, which are tarot, obviously, and film. And so what I've been doing is trying to discuss in an intelligent way. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's, sometimes I'm a little rambly, but trying to discuss some of my favorite films, and then at the end of the video, do a tarot reading, because a lot of times some films have either like gaping plot holes that, like what was meant by that, or just if there's unanswered questions in general, so you just put it out there to the universe, like what was the ending, like, or what was the motivation for this character. So today's video, is on Grand Hotel, 1932. But before I get into discussing it, there's a few points I want to mention, because in my last few videos, I tend to talk off the cuff, and then I don't tend to get the details right all the time. So I want to make correct a few things. I mentioned in Maltese Falcon that Sidney Greenstreet won an Academy Award for that role. Now, it's true it was his first appearance on film. It's true he was nominated for an Academy Award, but he didn't win it that year. He won it a little bit later, but not that year. So that was I should have checked that before I said it. I also cited for one of, I think when I was doing Cosmic Tarot and we were looking at movie star faces, and I mentioned that the little blonde boy looked a lot to me like Jackie Coogan, who starred in a film with Chaplin. Now, the film I was thinking of was called The Kid. It's a really good film. It's really great, but it's a silent film. But I accidentally said The Champ. Now, The Champ was a different film with different actors altogether. It wasn't the one I was thinking about, so I wanted to correct that. Let's see. And also in the Maltese Falcon, there was a character that I referred to as the trailer and also as the Gunsel, because I couldn't think of the character's name, and I've since remembered his name. And his real name in the film was Wilmer. So I just wanted to throw those things out there. Okay, Grand Hotel, 1932. It is a pre-code. So it was maybe able to get away with a little bit more than the films that came after 34, 35 that had to dance around subject matter that was maybe off color. This was an American film, despite it giving all the appearance of having been, taking place in Germany. It does take place in Germany. It takes place in Berlin at a Grand Hotel. Hence the movie name, Grand Hotel. But it was an American film. It was directed by Edmund Goulding, produced by MGM. And although Irving Thalberg gets the credit, I think Paul Byrne had an awful lot to do with it as well. Unfortunately, he died, before this came out, or before this was released, I think. Now, this might be another thing that I'll be talking about in another video, correcting myself, but I really do think that Paul Byrne also had a lot to do with this, but he didn't get any credit because when he died, there was a big scandal, and I don't think it would have been advantageous for MGM to put Paul Byrne's name on this, the credits list here. So Irving Thalberg got the credit. Here's some really great trivia, and this, is interesting that some of you who may have been watching the Academy Awards the other night, this might blow your mind. Grand Hotel 1932 is the only film ever to win Best Picture without having ever won or having been nominated for a single other category. No other categories. The only category it went up for was Best Picture, and it won. And that's a lot. A lot of people debate that. I've gotten in conversations with people, and I've seen people talking or reading articles about how the heck did it win? It's unheard of. Like now, if a movie only has a couple of nominations and it wins Best Picture, it's like, how the heck did that win? This other movie had like 18 nominations or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It didn't win. But how do you have like multiple nominations and not win best film of the year? But it's happened, and this is the year that it happened. Now we can get into a whole conversation about how it won without having any other nominations, but let's consider what's behind this film. For one, some of you may know Grand Hotel. Some of you may know the name and know that it references an old movie, but maybe you never saw it, but you're familiar with that it is a movie. But I bet you can't name any of the other films that were nominated for Best Picture in 1932. I can't think of any of them. Of course, it was nominated with 4 other, or maybe 5, a total of 5 films, right? Well, I don't know any of them. In fact, when I looked it up and I saw who they were, I never saw them, never heard of them. So it's kind of, it speaks about it. It's like it's a film that captivated the audience and everybody else who ever saw it, and it didn't need to have any other categories nominated. It's also a star-studded cast. It has Greta Garbo, who was hugely popular. I mean, she was just, Greta Garbo, the Garbo mystique. She plays a prima ballerina. I'm going to tell you what characters they played so that you can imagine in your head if you know the characters. So Greta Garbo is this, extremely melodramatic prima donna who's like suicidal. She's like over the top in her emotions. Both Barrymore brothers are in this. So we have John Barrymore, who is a baron who's fallen on hard times. Just because you're a baron doesn't mean you have money. It's like it costs a lot of money to keep up a grand estate that a baron would own, and it takes thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in those days. Today too, right? Nowadays barons who own property granted to them from nobility, they rent the space out for things like Downton Abbey, right? I mean, they have to like make money, so they do what they need to do to upkeep these estates, right? Well, at any rate, John Barrymore plays a baron who's down on his luck. He's broke. His brother, Lionel Barrymore, who is my favorite Barrymore, he's in this film, and he plays a man who is dying. He's reached the end of his life, and he's got a terrible disease, and he never had a family. It doesn't seem like he ever had like a wife and children or anything like that. He just was somebody who just worked at the grindstone his entire life, and then finds out he's dying, and he never enjoyed his life. He never enjoyed spending money, and he's like, what the heck? And he just decides that he's going to go out in a blaze of glory, and all the money he saved all his life isn't going to go to his nieces and nephews or anything like that. He is just going to have a really good time. So that's Lionel Barrymore's role. Joan Crawford is in this, and she is beautiful. Whatever you think about Joan Crawford and Mommy Dearest and all that, forget it. Put it out of your head when you see this film. She was just beautiful in this movie, and I think she did a great job up against all those big stars. I mean, she was a young person. She was maybe 23. Her age was always questionable because she lied about her age. But she was young, and Garbo and the Barrymores and Wallace Beary, Louis Stone, Jean Hirschholt also has a small role in this. So these are big named people. These are people who were huge, and she was getting a name for herself also, but she was like, if there was an underweight in this category of great actors and actresses, she was it, but she held her own. She definitely held her own. This movie has been remade twice. There was a Weekend at the Waldorf in 1945 that was created, and then there was a German remake in 1959. which I never saw. It's not mentioned as a remake, but there was a 70s film that I remember that, you know, made me think of this plot. It was, I think it was came out in 1971. It starred Walter Matthau, Barbara Harris, Lee Grant, and it was called Plaza Suite. And so it also takes place in a hotel, and all the people that come and go in the hotel, which is what the plot of this movie is about. It's about a very grand hotel in Berlin at the height of the Great Depression, when everybody was so broke and so poor. And this is a film about staying at the grandest hotel. Money is no object. So if you're staying at this hotel, you're really spending a couple of bucks, you know. I think it's fair to say that it's very Art Deco. There are some Art Deco elements, and also, you know, just the building itself is this tall, like unending ceiling, you know, and everything is just designed, I think, just perfectly Art Deco. It's got one notable iconic line in it, like, like how the Maltese Falcon had, "Here's looking at you, kid," or play it, Sam," right? That kind of thing. And that is when Garbo says, "I want to be alone." She says it in this film. Okay, so the plot goes that there are a cast of characters who have come into the hotel for a weekend or a week, I don't know, they're just coming in together. And the cast of characters in the descriptions that I've just shown you interact with one another. They come to know one another. The Baron is a kindly kind of individual, but he's broke. And he's, he's got to come up with, I think he's got to come up with a huge sum of money, like maybe 4,000 marks or something. I think at the time the implication is that was a lot of money. I think it was maybe 4,000 marks. And he befriends the dying man. So, before the plot really begins, in the hallway, the two Barrymore brothers meet each other, the dying man and the Baron. And the Baron also meets Joan Crawford's character. I forgot to describe what she was. She was a secretary for a industrialist, capitalist businessman. So she's his secretary. And so those three meet each other in the hallway. Then we learn about a character, Wallace Beary. He's the capitalist, the businessman, and he's trying to do some kind of big deal. And he's a swindler. He's a no good for nothing, but he's like the kind of guy that married the boss's wife, and he's like one of the richest men ever, and he just runs, he doesn't care who he hurts in the process. As it turns out, one of the Barrymore brothers, the Lionel Barrymore, was a man who actually worked for this capitalist his whole life. And he realized, what am I slaving my life away for this guy who doesn't appreciate me and treats me like crap and stuff like that? So now the dying man, the Lionel Barrymore character, is really thrilled to be at a hotel where his boss is, all his, that he's had for all these years. And, he takes the opportunity to tell him to go to hell. And when at some point in the story, and Wallace Beary, the capitalist boss, is like, "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm going to fire you." And the sick, I think his name was Crinoline. They have some. Their names are very, very German. Obviously, it was supposed to be taking place in Germany. But, Crinoline says, "You can't fire me. By the time you fire me, I'll be dead. I'm like free. I can do whatever I want. Like, see ya," that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, it's got some feel-good moments to it. Now, the Prima Ballerina is past her prime, the part played by Garbo. She's like really depressed. She just she's over the top in her melodrama. And she comes back to her hotel room early. I think she wasn't supposed to come home come out as early, but I think she has like temper tantrums on stage, and she leaves, and she doesn't, like, she walks out on performances and stuff like that. And unbeknownst to her, the Baron, who was basically a jewel thief, he knew that she had some precious jewels. He knew she had a very precious pearl necklace in her safe. So he's desperate enough. He tries, he breaks into her hotel room, and he's in possession of the pearls. She comes home, so he goes and he hides because he doesn't want to get caught, obviously. He couldn't escape quick enough. And he sees that she's so depressed and that she's so melancholy that she appears as though she's going to take some medicine, to like do herself in. And he stops, he says, I can't let you go through with this, and he pretends that he's a fan that's loved her from afar all these years. And, he just came to her room to be near her. And when he saw what she was going to do, he wanted to stop her. Now, of course, that's not really why he was in the room. But in the course of the evening, they fall in love, and they talk, and they end up just like having a wonderful time. And they both fall in love. And then after they fall in love, he says, well, I got to come clean. I got to tell you the truth. I'm really in your room because I was going to steal your jewels. And then, of course, she's offended and she throws them out. She says, take the jewels. And he says, no. I could have gone unseen. I could have let you kill yourself. I didn't do that. I'm smitten by you. I love you. You can have the pearl. I don't want them either. So he proves to her that he's in love with her, and she says, well, take the pearls. You can have the pearls. He's like, no, I don't want the pearls. So she wants him to accompany her when she leaves the hotel and goes to points unknown for the future. And he's really falling in love with him. It's really put some pep in her step, as love does. And so now she's like, back to being a wonderful prima ballerina. And she gives the performances, inspired performances, because now she's in love, right? But getting on the train, she wants him to get on the train the next morning to accompany her, but he has this debt that he owes, I guess, some kind of mafia group, or some kind of what's it called, organized crime, that he's become part of because he needs money. So it's like the route he decided to take, and he owes them money, so he knows he can't escape them. And all he had to do was really ask her if she would help him out, because she'd have been willing to, but I guess he was too proud, so he wouldn't accept her money. But the problem is, it's not that he's so noble that he wouldn't take her money, because he's willing to rob other people. I mean, he's not like turning a leaf because love has made him wonderful, or love has made him see the error of his ways. He's just not really going to rob her, but he has every intention of stealing money from somebody. And at one point he tries stealing money from Kringeline, the poor guy who's dying. And they have like a card game with a bunch of men who get together and decide to have a card game. And so the Baron wants to get in on it because he thinks maybe it's his chance to win some money. And Kringeline, the dying man, wants to get in on it because he just wants to have fun, And so what if he blows some money, He doesn't care. So they get involved with this card game, and of course the dying man wins it, and he's just amazed. He's just like, wow, I've never wanted anything in my whole life, and now I'm winning all this money. So he wins all this money. Of course, now the Baron is like, oh my God, he lost everything he had because he gambled when he shouldn't have. And so that's that plot, And meanwhile, there's Wallace Beary, the industrialist, and he's hired this young woman, Flemchen, the Joan Crawford character, and he hires her to be his secretary. But as it turns out, she's beautiful, she's shapely, she's shown him that she's done photographs, artistic photographs in magazines and stuff like that. So he gets the idea that when he has to take his business to the UK. I think that's where he's got to act fast, and he's got to go to the UK. So he asks her, "You want to come along, baby?" That kind of thing. It's you're going to be a secretary, but you're going to be nice to me, right? So we understand what that's all about. And she accepts it, and she understands what it's all about. She understands him perfectly. She tells him that, I understand you perfectly. She's willing to do it because she's broke. So everybody here is broke, or everybody is motivated by money. So she agrees to go with him, and be his hookup for the business deal. So as the film comes to an end, Flemschen, the Joan Crawford character, and the Wallace Beary capitalist guy are talking in the bedroom, and we understand what their arrangement's going to be. And while they're talking in her bedroom, he sees a shadow in his room, because he got her an adjoining room, So he sees a shadow in his room, and he goes into the room, and he sees the Baron there. Up to no good, obviously. He's like stealing they call it the pocketbook, steals his wallet. So there's a confrontation between them, and Wallace Beary picks something up. I don't remember what it was, but it was an object large enough and heavy enough to put him down, kill him, So he knocks him over the head with this thing, and it's an object heavy enough that it kills him. And so, of course, Flemschen, the girl, sees what the capitalist did. She sees, oh my God, you killed him. So she freaks out. She goes screaming down the hallway. She gets Kringeline, the dying man, and she says, come quickly. You got to see what's happened, And so he sees that the Baron was killed, and, he says, oh, the poor guy, he was trying to make money all night, and, and Wallace Beery's like, yeah, well, he tried to rob me, and I had to defend myself. Now, the truth is, after Priceling confronted the Baron and said, you thief, give me my money back, he gave it back without thought. He apologized. He says, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. And he gives it back. So he gave back. There wasn't like, you robbed me and I want my money back. And the guy's like, I'm going to beat you up for it. That nothing like that. The Baron, gave it back, But that wasn't good enough for Priceling. And Priceling, for whatever reasons, acts in a violent way that he shouldn't have. And he ended up killing the Baron, as I mentioned. So now the Baron is dead. The capitalist is the one who killed him. The secretary got the dying man to come into the room. It's like, what do we do? So the dying man confronts Priceling and says, you don't kill a man for this, he's just, why did you do this? This is terrible. And then the capitalist is like, well, hey, it'll ruin. He's more worried about his reputation. He's not so worried that he killed a man. He's more worried that if there's a scandal around this, that I have this girl with me, that'll destroy me. I can deal with the murder. It was like he didn't even care that a person was killed. He was like, I'll never survive this scandal of being with this girl. So you say that the girl was with you and that she came in here to trick me and, try to seduce me. And then she brought her partner in here to rob me, and none of that was true, of course. So the dying man was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he calls the police. And then the next thing you know, the capitalist is handcuffed and taken out. After things settled down, like an hour or 10 minutes or whatever amount of time, it was brief, he and Joan Crawford talk. And he's like, well, what are you doing with him? Like, what were you doing with him? And she's like, I'm struggling, man. I don't have any money. I don't want to be with him, but, I got to do what I got to do. I need money. And he realizes the situation. He understands completely what she was doing, and he doesn't judge her, and she was like, you understand? And he's like, yeah, I get it. I completely get it. So she says, you're a really good guy. You're a great man, and she obviously respected him because she went and got him when this crisis happened, So he looks at her and he says, I got a lot of money and I'm dying, do you want to hook up with me for the rest of what I have left in my life and we can have a good time? I'll do whatever, I'm looking for a good time. Will you be my person? Now, a lot of people just see her as a person who's just shamelessly taken advantage of him. But he knows I think my view on it is that he knows who she is, and he knows what her arrangement was. But in the course of the film, they became friends, and he understood her situation and she understood his. In fact, she defended him many times in the course of the film when Priceling, the business magnate, was, belittling of him. So they just hook up, and so it's understood. And she is pretty respectful because he says, oh, here, I'll give you all my money. And she's like, no. She gives it back to him. But she arranges, she's like, I'll help you spend it, So she arranges for them to have transportation to Paris, and they're going to go to the Grand Hotel in Paris, and they're going to have a great time. And you understand that I think there's a mutual respect with one another, and I think they do like one another, and they both made their difficult situations bearable, because now he's got this beautiful woman who's willing to be with him, and they like each other, and she, is going to have a good time for as long as this guy lasts. Maybe there'll be something left over, but she doesn't even act like she wants his money, because she says, you know what? We can take you to the best hospitals in the world. Things can get, you could get treated. So she gives him hope as well. I mean, it's not just that they're going to blow through his money, but one of the priorities that she states is that he's going to get taken care of. So they go off, and they go off into the sunset. They get a taxi and they're on their way to Gay Paris, and they're thrilled. They couldn't be any happier. Priceling, the businessman, gets taken out in handcuffs. Of course, the Baron gets taken out in a hearse, right? So the only one who's completely unaware of what happened is the Prima Ballerina, and nobody wants to tell her that the love of her life was just killed, because they'll never get her to go on stage. So they tell her that they're keeping it a big secret. They shroud her in silence. And she's like, where is he? He's supposed to be joining me, in her Garbo way, her very overly dramatic way. Where is he? He must be with me, that kind of thing. And they're like, he'll be there. He's on the train already. Don't worry. So they get her on the train, and they presumably to get her to her next performance. And hopefully she performs before she realizes that he no longer exists, because she won't perform if she realizes that he died. Now, there's a couple other little roles, like Louis Stone. He's kind of like he kind of narrates in the beginning. So, and we all know Louis Stone. He did a lot of those Andy Hardy films. He was like Andy Hardy's dad. So in this film, he's kind of like the muse, the wise one. Like if you were to give him a tarot card, he'd kind of be like the hermit. And then there's Jean Hirschholt. That some of you may remember. For years, there used to be a Jean Hirschholt Award at the Academy Awards. I don't know if they still give it out. And he had a little cameo role. He was somebody who worked in the hotel as like the staff, a clerk at the phone or something like that. And his wife was going to have a baby, and all throughout the movie, it's just like he's fretting by the phone, is this woman going to have this child or not? And finally, at the end, after we learned that the Baron died, we also learned that this man's wife finally had the baby. So there's life and death happening at the same time. The wise one, the hermit, the Louis Stone character, in the beginning of the film says, weekend at the weekend at the Grand Hotel, people come, people go, nothing ever happens. And of course, all this drama happens. But the last thing he says at the end of the film is, weekend at the Berlin or whatever, the weekend at the Grand Hotel, people come, people go, nothing ever happens. And then you see the new group of people who flood the hotel, like a newlywed couple and just a bunch of other people who are now coming to have their own stories happen out at the Grand Hotel. So 30 minutes, not bad. Last time it was like 50 minutes before I ever got to the cards. So I have a few questions that I want to put to the cards. I forgot to write them down. They're on my phone, and now I can't check what they are. So let me go off camera. Let me remember what my questions were, and then I'll lay some cards. Okay, So I remembered the 4 questions that I had. So I'll say them all at once, and then we'll do them individually, just so you know what the questions will be. 1, why was the prima donna so sad? Why was she so miserable, 2, how did the Baron lose his fortune? How did both of these 2 characters come to the point where they are, where they're really at the lowest point in their lives? Now, Crinoline, who's there at the lowest point of his life too, because he's dying. So I kind of want to know, does he die as expected, or is this new lease on life enough to get him happy? I think one of the reasons why he was dying was because he was so unhappy, and he just worked for the man, working his life away and never enjoying life, and duty, finds out he's dying, and he's like, oh my God, I wasted my life. So with this new lease on life, do he and Flemschen, the Joan Crawford character, do they actually end up that he's okay? They get him to the right, specialists, and he survives, and do they live happily ever after? And the most pressing one, the one that I really want to know the most, is why did Preisling feel it was necessary to kill the Baron? The Baron gave him back the money when he confronted him. When the businessman confronted the Baron, he gave him back the money. So there was no reason to kill the man. So that's the one I want to know the most, but I'm going to do that one last. So I'm going to flip the camera. The deck I've chosen to use I thought it would be fun to use a deck with like a Art Deco feel, since the movie is so stylish. Oh, that's another reason why I probably won, aside from the star-studded cast of like the greatest actors of the time, and I think this probably was the first time we really had a star-studded cast, literally star-studded. But also it was just so, like, everything about it was grandiose. Everything about it was stylish. And, I don't know why it didn't win any of the other, why it wasn't even nominated for any of the other categories, unless it felt like this film is the best. Having to put it through other categories is beneath it. I don't know. I really don't know what the logic was. It's never going to happen again. It never has happened since, and it never will, I'm sure. But so I decided to use a deck that I think has a Art Deco feel, and that is the Fortuna Tarot deck, which was given to me recently in the past year by a friend I haven't heard from in a long time, but by a subscriber who I became friendly with. At any rate, it's a beautiful deck. It's an Art Deco deck. I'll show you a couple of the cards before. I have done. No, I won't do that. I have done a video on these cards, and so I'll link that link in the description. But this is a different kind of deck, right? It's Art Deco, but the cast of characters are all the same. So, okay, let me flip the camera. Let me go into my meditative place, shuffle the cards. These are in order, and it's not an easy deck to shuffle because it's so big, so it's going to take me a few hundred shuffles. So if the light changes by the time I come back, that's why. Okie doke. So I don't know what's up or down. I don't concern myself with reversals. So if I flip the cards, if they're reversed, that's why. The first question is, why was the Prima Ballerina so sad? Now, off camera, because I can't riffle. Oh, it got damaged. Wow. That's too bad. Some of this got chipped or something. Oh, that's too bad. Well, at any rate, I wasn't able to riffle shuffle, so I had to overhand shuffle. But I tried to riffle shuffle, and when I tried to riffle shuffle, that's probably when I damaged the cards. So if you have this deck, or you're thinking of getting this deck, because it is a sharp deck, and maybe if you find it awkward to riffle shuffle with, maybe don't, because you might damage the cards. Okay, so why was the Prima Ballerina so sad? 3 card spreads with the 4th. Okay, the Hermit. Now, I mentioned the Hermit when I was talking about one of the other characters. Does it tie into him? It doesn't seem as though they had any scenes together. They didn't have anything together with, So I don't think this is a reference to the Lewis Stone character who I described as the Hermit, but we'll see. Justice. Wow. Okay, so we have the Hermit and we have Justice. And, they're only 2 cards away, so maybe it wasn't a great shuffle. And then this one is the Princess of Elixirs. So I would take the princess to be her because she's the person who's the character in the question. Now, a princess is not a queen, right? So there's a certain amount of immaturity, perhaps. This is suggesting it's her. She acts like a princess. She's a prima ballerina. She's a diva. So, she's prone to, a full-blown range of emotions, right? So I think this is her. Now let's do, there's 2 already. There's 2 Triumph cards here, but let's just for the heck of it, let's see what the quintessential card would be. Okay, so I think I understand this one. The quintessential card is the Judgment card, and sometimes I've told you that I like to cut to the chase, and we'll go directly to the quint card for that row. And for those of you who are new to how I do it, it's like 9 and 11, and we get 20, which is Judgment. So it seems now we determined that this was the prima ballerina herself, not at her peak, right? She's a princess here. She's not a queen. So she's, maybe it's an immature aspect of herself, not a fully mature aspect of herself, although she herself is old enough, So the Judgment card here suggests to me that she is wise enough with the Hermit here, wise enough that she was able to read the critics' reviews, or she knows that, her audience, or she's being judged, right, twice, right, the concept that, that she's past her prime, or that she's not, she's no longer happy with it. She's not feeling it from the audiences, She lost her passion. Now, she regained it when she hooked up with the Baron, and she thought she was in love, and that, that was going to be enough, and it made a difference for her, We see love does something like that, right? Like love can transcend you. And, that's part of the reason why I was asking about Kringeline and Flemschen, are they going to be happy together and, blah, 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 blah. So can love overcome whatever obstacle is there? Now, you might say, well, why aren't you reading this as she's wise and fairness will happen? And because I'm reading it, I'm interpreting the cards to the context of the question. And the context of the question is she's an unhappy person. So what has brought her there, right? And so she's been brought there because she's been judged harshly, or she's just like taking a critical eye at her own work, and she sees that it's just not up to snuff, and she just would rather be gone than have a less than stellar reputation, for the quality or the body of her work. So I think what we think is probably, what we think in the, film, if you look at it, and you probably come to that conclusion yourself, right? So the cards seem to just spell it out pretty easily. The second question is, how did the Baron lose his fortune? So, a Baron is a title granted on somebody, of lesser nobility, but, maybe he's the nephew of a duke who and the duke is like the son of a king, maybe, or the sibling of a king, so there was a lot of money, but the property that the Baron has is inherited, and so it continues down the line. And the earmark of like a baron or a gentleman, one of these people who is so rich they don't have to work, they shudder at the idea of work, actually. So they're more accustomed to spending the money than they are to making it. But nowadays they have to come up with ways to keep the estate open, because otherwise it closes down. So then they have to acquiesce to such indignities as having films come in, I guess, and film their home for like history pieces, because how other way to maintain the place and keep it going? All right, I digress. How did the Baron lose his fortune? What were his vices? Let's say, put it like that. What were the Baron's vices? The Empress, women. Women. What a surprise. Women. Okay. So he lost his money that way. And the magician. Well, how do we use this card? Do we interpret it as the Rider-Waite-Smith kind of tradition of being a magus? Excuse me. Being a magus, magus rather. Is it magus or magus or I'm sorry, I can't remember how to say the word. Do we interpret it like that, like somebody who is magical for real, or do we interpret it, in the tradition of the historic cards, which is somebody who's a con man and somebody who's a trickster? Now, I see there's an association here with Mercury, who is a trickster. So I'm going to go with, now they do use that symbol to show, I think being able to change, like being mercurial is being able to change something from one thing to another. So I think it's legit to interpret this card in the mercurial sense of your choice. And so I think of the magician, or the bachelier, as the con. So he's a con, and he's gotten himself into situations where he's like he plays a con game. He's like trying to steal money, the beautiful pearls from the Prima Ballerina. He's gotten in with a bad group. He's running with a organized crime, and he likes to spend his money, I think, on women. Right? He spends his money on, and he likes all kinds of women. He's open to it all, right? So I think that explains that, And he's gotten in over his head because he's had to revert to conning in order to make a living. The third, does Kringeline die as expected, or did he and Flämmchen find a doctor that cures him? Or does his new look on life actually bring him back to life? What is there? What does their future hold? How do things turn out for them? Now, I don't remember if I actually did the quintessential for the last spread, but I don't always do quintessentials. It's not always necessary. Sometimes the answer is crystal clear. The Emperor, so a person in a position of authority. Him, okay, he's the seeker, right? It's interesting that we're getting all these major order cards, these higher order cards, Well, all right. So at any rate, we have the Emperor, we have 0, that's so that we have 4, and 0 and 5 is 9, so that's the Hermit. So the Hermit is the wise one. Let me get the Hermit out. So this is interesting. I think it could probably go either way, but the spread is flanked by the Emperor, who is, the authority, right? He's the authority. He's got great power. And then on the other side, we have the Hermit, who is full of wisdom. So perhaps he does hook up with a doctor who can really help him. And, the Seeker, who is the character, seeks wellness and healing. And we have, this would be the Pope. So I guess, what he gains in even if he does pass away, what he gains is enlightenment, So I don't think, I think we shouldn't even worry about whether or not he, doesn't immediately pass away, because it seems like the quality of his life is as high as it could be. He does get help. It seems like he does seek he does act wisely. And so I would think that this probably means he gets counseling and he sees authorities and so I think he is getting, the medicine and the help that he needs. And whether or not it gives him the extra years, is probably immaterial, because what he gets is, he gets him, he arrives at a happy place, a spiritual place. I think that's what that means. And the last one is the one I really want to know. is, why did Priestley kill the Baron? Was it really necessary to kill the Baron? The Baron gave him his money back. There was no reason to kill the Baron. So let me, mix the cards some more, and I'll come back and we'll do that last question. Alrighty. So let's just do a few more shuffles for the camera. And why did Priestley feel like it was necessary to kill the Baron? He didn't have to. Didn't have to. It was unnecessary. The Wheel of Fortune, Fortuna. 10 Cups. Ace of Cups and Ace of Fire. So that would be wands or batons, how I see it. So we have 10, and 10 is 20. 20 and 1 is 21 is the World card. Wow. Okay, so let me pull the World card. Okay, so in this deck, the World card is the Magnum Opus. So it's like the grand, the full body of work, so. And I think this represents this deal. Now, I didn't get into it really heavily in the plot of the film, but this Priestley guy, he wheels and deals, and he's doing, the reason he's going to the UK, I think it's the UK, with Flemschen, is to put a deal through that he's lied about, and I think he's got to do something very deviant. He's already done a few deviant things regarding business, being dishonest and stuff like that. So now he has to go to the UK, I think, to because he's put this illegal. He's done something illegal, and he's put something in motion, and so now it seems like he's got to take off for the UK in order to intercept, or he's got to do something. I never quite fully grasped it, but he's got to do something to fix what he's done, or to get everybody else on board with this very deviant and dishonest and immoral act of business. So it's funny, he kills the Baron because he thinks the Baron is a common crook, but Priestley is a greater crook than the Baron could ever be. He's just done hugely indecent things, behind the doors with the business, aside from the fact that he's, taking a woman on the trip that's not his wife. So he's sleazy to the core. There's nothing of value to this man. He's just awful. And, it's interesting because we have, the high, the exalted card, right? And then we have the Wheel of Fortune, which kind of makes me feel like he feels like he's entitled, maybe, he sees the Baron as a microcosm of himself, because, he sees the Baron as a crook, but so is he, and maybe by killing the Baron, he's denying that he's just like the Baron, only on steroids. That's what these two cards are making me think. A sense of, I think he sees what I just said. I think he sees it. And, but there's also a sense of entitlement, where he's superior. Then we have, what are these? We have another 10. Okay, so 10 and 10, is a finality, right? The Wheel of Fortune is 10, and so is the 10 Cups. So it's a finality. He's got to put an end to the, I guess he's got to put an end to the Baron, because I think it comes back to himself again. I think he wants to put an end to the Baron because he wants to, what's the word? Symbolically deny, that he's just as bad, if not worse. And then I guess he thinks it's going to give him a new lease. And, it gives him a new lease on the future for himself. And he feels like he's entitled. So I don't follow that logic because I'm not a evil, wicked person. I mean, sometimes I guess. Sometimes I guess. I have my moments where I'm not like wonderful, but I'm never like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like never this bad, But I just get the feeling that he just feels like if he kills the Baron, he's killing the ugly side of himself, and in some way that redeems himself for a new life. But he ultimately just sees that he's entitled to do this. But of course, his life goes down the pissyoon pretty quick because he gets arrested and everybody knows what he did. So I know these videos on the movies tend to last a long time because I have to describe the film and I have to get into things about the film, and then I have to do readings on the film. So they do take a little bit of time. So, if they don't end up being too popular, I won't continue doing them every day. But I'll do one a week. I'll probably do one a week because I've seen so many films so many times. The Great Hotel isn't one of my favorites. Well, it is a favorite. It is. But it's not like The Maltese Falcon or Casablanca or The Big Chill or Laura. It's not like that I've seen it, 100 times or close to 100 times. I've probably only seen this a dozen times. But I've seen it enough, because I really do like it. Whenever I know that it's on, I'll watch it. So I hope this video has been fun for you. Please, as always, give me your opinion. And if you hate it, tell me you hate it so I don't keep doing them or I won't do them as often. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.